Imagine yourself standing between the two most powerful underworlds in modern history. On one side, the Sicilian Mafia, a symbol of brutality and tradition in the Mediterranean. On the other, the American Mafia, a modernized and sophisticated criminal organization dominating the United States. Who are they? How are they different? And one day, should they clash? Who would emerge victorious? The journey to explore the contrasts between these two organizations not only unveils unexpected perspectives but also reveals secrets few have ever known. From the narrow streets of Sicily to the brightly lit avenues of New York, every step is built on schemes, power, and fear. So get ready, because this story will take you to the heart of the two most infamous underworlds. When mentioning the Sicilian Mafia and the American Mafia, these two names evoke images of transnational criminal organizations with powerful influence. However, there are distinct differences between them in terms of influence and scope of operations, shaped by history, geography, and cultural context. The Sicilian Mafia, also known as Cosa Nostra, originated on the island of Sicily, Italy. They dominated rural areas, using force to protect their economic and political interests. With its strategic location, Sicily became a gateway for drug trafficking, especially heroin, reaching Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Their operations were often limited to the Mediterranean region, where they leveraged ports to establish smuggling networks. However, the Italian authorities, particularly in the 20th century, implemented strong measures to suppress the organization's power in major cities like Palermo and Naples. In contrast, the American Mafia quickly built a vast network across the United States. Emerging from the wave of Italian immigration in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, they established power in major cities such as New York, Chicago, and Las Vegas. With the economic boom and opportunities of the Prohibition era, the American Mafia not only controlled the illegal alcohol market but also infiltrated legitimate industries such as construction, entertainment, and labor unions. Unlike the Sicilian Mafia, the American Mafia paid little attention to controlling rural territories, focusing instead on exploiting economic opportunities in urban areas. However, clashes between the two organizations were inevitable. The Sicilian Mafia, with its long history and deep influence in the Mediterranean region, often prided itself on its traditions and dominance. Meanwhile, the American Mafia, more modernized and adept at navigating the U.S. underground economy, sought to surpass the shadow of its elder sibling. Both had ambitions to dominate their respective fields, creating constant competition in the underworld. So, which organization wields greater influence? The Sicilian Mafia, with its robust international networks and dominance in its homeland, or the American Mafia, with its ability to control the urban underground economy and its modernized approach? To delve deeper, we will explore the organizational structures of these two powers in the next section. To understand how the Sicilian Mafia and the American Mafia sustain their power and endure over time, we need to delve into their organizational structures, the core factor determining the strength of each organization. Although both share the name Cosa Nostra, their structures reflect significant differences in culture, history, and operational environments. The Sicilian Mafia operates on a traditional model shaped by its early days in Sicily. Each mafia family, known as a family, functions independently within its own territory. Yet all are overseen by a supervisory body called the cupola, or the High Commission. The cupola acts as a council, resolving internal conflicts between families and making crucial strategic decisions. This decentralized structure allows the Sicilian Mafia to maintain flexibility and autonomy at the local level while ensuring a degree of unity across the organization. However, This decentralization also leads to major limitations. When families operate independently, power struggles or territorial disputes easily arise. Moreover, each family often has its own priorities, making it challenging for the organization to coordinate large-scale operations or respond effectively to government crackdowns. A prime example is the 1980s, when infighting among major Sicilian families severely weakened the organization, providing an opening for Italian authorities to infiltrate and dismantle its networks. In contrast, the American Mafia modernized its organizational structure early on. A standout feature is the establishment of the Commission, a national council founded by Lucky Luciano in the 1930s. The Commission functions as the supreme governing body, setting rules and coordinating the activities of the largest mafia families in the United States, such as the 5 families in New York or organizations in Chicago and Detroit. Rather than allowing families to operate independently, the Commission created a system of controlled decentralization, resolving conflicts and optimizing operational efficiency. Thanks to this centralized structure, the American Mafia minimized internal wars and enhanced coordination in major ventures, from bootlegging during Prohibition to controlling labor unions. However, centralization also comes with significant risks. When senior members of the Commission become targets of law enforcement, the entire organization is more easily exposed. A notable example is the 1980s, when leaders like John Gotti were arrested, and the American Mafia's tightly knit structure made it a prime target for large-scale crackdowns. Although both systems have their strengths and weaknesses, the differences in their structures clearly reflect the historical contexts and operational environments of each organization. The Sicilian Mafia, with its long history and rural culture, favors decentralization to maintain flexibility and tradition. Meanwhile, the American Mafia, operating in urbanized and highly competitive environments, opts for centralization to maximize power and efficiency. But which structure is truly superior in the modern underworld? The Sicilian Mafia, with its rapid adaptability due to decentralization, or the American Mafia, with its centralized strength and tightly managed operations? This is the open question leading to the next section, where we will explore how these two organizations build their reputations and instill fear in both the public and their enemies. Reputation and fear are two core elements that not only help the Sicilian Mafia and the American Mafia maintain power but also solidify their standing in the eyes of both the public and the criminal underworld. While both organizations build their reputations on a foundation of power and intimidation, the ways they achieve this are strikingly different. The Sicilian Mafia is infamous for its ruthless brutality, which has become its brand. From its early days, the organization employed open violence to instill fear in communities. Assassinations, internal purges, and extrajudicial executions were carried out brazenly, often in broad daylight. To send a clear message, no one could betray or challenge their authority without facing dire consequences. A prime example is the death of Salvatore Giuliano, a notorious gunman who once collaborated with the Sicilian Mafia but later became a perceived threat. Giuliano was assassinated in central Palermo, witnessed by dozens, as a stark warning to any would-be traitors. Additionally, the Code of Omerta, the Code of Silence, played a crucial role in maintaining the Sicilian Mafia's reputation. Under this code, anyone who divulged information about the organization faced death, not just for themselves but for their families. Omerta created an invisible yet effective shield, preventing leaks and enhancing the organization's aura of fear and mystery. However, this public brutality also made the Sicilian Mafia a prime target for the Italian government, particularly during the 1980s and 1990s, when prosecutors like Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino took a stand against them. Although both were assassinated, their campaigns significantly weakened the Sicilian Mafia's power. In contrast, the American Mafia built its reputation in a more sophisticated manner. While it did not shy away from violence, it avoided overt acts to minimize public and law enforcement scrutiny. Instead, the American Mafia focused on manipulating economic and political systems to strengthen its influence. One of its most iconic figures was John Gotti, famously known as the Dapper Don. With his suave demeanor and media charisma, Gotti not only inspired fear among rivals but also garnered loyalty from subordinates and admiration from certain segments of the public. However, this prominence came with serious consequences. Gotti's high profile made him the top target for the FBI, leading to his arrest and life imprisonment in 1992. A key difference in reputation building between the two organizations lies in their relationship with the community. Despite its brutality, the Sicilian Mafia maintained a deep connection with the people of Sicily. In many cases, they positioned themselves as protectors against government injustices or external threats, earning loyalty from some sections of the population, whether through fear or gratitude. In contrast, the American Mafia paid little attention to community image. They focused more on controlling industries and infiltrating politics, where they could manipulate systems for greater gains. However, reputation is a double-edged sword. For the Sicilian Mafia, overt brutality sparked widespread opposition from both the government and the public, leading to a decline in power in recent decades. Conversely, the American Mafia's subtlety allowed them to endure longer but made them vulnerable to undercover investigations, especially when high-ranking members were persuaded to become witnesses against the organization. The question remains, which reputation is more terrifying? An organization like the Sicilian Mafia, which wields public violence, or one like the American Mafia, which operates silently but with calculated intent? These contrasting approaches to building reputation not only reflect the operational environments of each organization but also represent their survival strategies in a competitive and perilous underworld. So, what enabled these two organizations to build such formidable reputations? And is that reputation enough to sustain their power in modern times? We will explore these answers further in the next section, as we delve into their strategies for territorial expansion and control. In the world of organized crime, power is built not only on reputation but also on the ability to expand and control territory. For the Sicilian Mafia and the American Mafia, their paths to influence and territorial dominance reflect the historical and cultural contexts in which they operate. The Sicilian Mafia, originating as a protector of local interests in rural Sicily, focused on controlling strategic trade hubs. Sicily, located in the heart of the Mediterranean, serves as a crucial gateway connecting Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Recognizing this advantage, the Sicilian Mafia quickly turned Sicily's ports into centers for heroin and arms trafficking. During the infamous Pizza Connection era, they established an international smuggling network, channeling drugs from the Middle East through Sicily to the United States and Europe. This international reach allowed the Sicilian Mafia to extend its influence beyond Italian borders. However, the Sicilian Mafia's strategy extended beyond smuggling routes. They maintained their grip on power at home by controlling rural areas where government presence was often weak or non-existent. In these regions, the Mafia acted as a shadow government, resolving local disputes, providing protection, and enforcing their own rules. This approach not only secured loyalty from some communities but also created a natural defense against government infiltration. In contrast, the American Mafia adopted a completely different strategy. Born from the wave of Italian immigrants, they quickly adapted to the urban environment of the United States, where economic opportunities were abundant. Rather than focusing on rural territories or international trade routes, the American Mafia targeted major cities such as New York, Chicago, and Las Vegas. Here, They engaged in illicit activities like bootlegging during Prohibition while infiltrating legitimate industries, including construction, casinos, and labor unions. A prime example of the American Mafia's expansion strategy is their dominance in Las Vegas during the 20th century. Realizing the immense potential of the casino industry, they heavily invested in building and operating major hotels and casinos. Through bribery and control of labor unions, the American Mafia not only generated enormous profits but also transformed Las Vegas into a fortress where their authority was difficult to challenge. Nonetheless, neither strategy was without flaws. The Sicilian Mafia, heavily reliant on international smuggling routes, became vulnerable when these routes were disrupted or closely monitored. During the 1980s, international cooperation between law enforcement agencies, particularly between Italy and the United States, dismantled the Sicilian Mafia's heroin network. At the same time, their concentration of power in Sicily limited their ability to expand into larger urban areas where the Italian government wielded considerable strength. For the American Mafia, their focus on legitimate industries brought great advantages but also significant risks. Their reliance on labor unions and political connections exposed them to large-scale investigations. One notable case is the Teamsters scandal, where the Mafia's ties to the Teamsters Union were uncovered, leading to high-profile arrests and trials in the 1970s and 1980s. Despite their differences, both organizations understood the critical importance of territorial control. For the Sicilian Mafia, territory was not only an economic resource but also a symbol of power and loyalty. For the American Mafia, territory was defined more broadly, encompassing industries and cities under their influence. These differing approaches reflect the unique contexts in which each organization operated and shaped how they addressed challenges and opportunities. The question remains, which strategy is more effective for sustaining power and ensuring longevity? The Sicilian Mafia, with its control over strategic trade routes and a firm grip on its homeland, or the American Mafia, with its urban economic focus and penetration into legitimate industries? To answer this, we must delve deeper into how they build alliances and partnerships, crucial factors that determine the survival of both organizations. In the perilous and competitive underworld, no organization can survive without relying on partnerships and alliances. For the Sicilian Mafia and the American Mafia, the differences in their operating environments have shaped how they build these connections, creating unique advantages but also significant risks. The Sicilian Mafia, rooted in Sicily, a region heavily influenced by external forces, has learned to survive by forging alliances with international organizations. They did not stop at controlling regional trade routes but also built networks with criminal organizations worldwide. A prime example is the relationship between the Sicilian Mafia and Albanian gangs, where these groups collaborated to transport heroin from the Middle East through the Balkans into Europe. These alliances not only strengthened the Sicilian Mafia economically but also expanded their influence beyond Italy's borders. Moreover, the Sicilian Mafia maintained a close relationship with mafia families in the United States. During the early 20th century, at the peak of Italian immigration to America, the Sicilian Mafia played a vital role in helping Italian crime groups establish a foothold in the U.S. Families like the Genovese and Gambino families in New York had deep ties with the Sicilian Mafia, particularly in international drug trafficking. Even operations such as the infamous Pizza Connection, a heroin distribution network between Sicily and the U.S., highlighted the extent of this cooperation. However, the Sicilian Mafia's international relationships also came with risks. The global nature of their alliances made them prime targets for international intelligence and law enforcement agencies. A notable example was the collaboration between Italian and American authorities in the 1980s, which led to the arrest and prosecution of numerous high-ranking Sicilian Mafia leaders due to information obtained through their international connections. In contrast, the American Mafia opted for closer, more localized partnerships, focusing on domestic industries and legal fronts. One of their most important strategies was infiltrating labor unions, such as the Teamsters, a major transportation union. By controlling the Teamsters, the American Mafia ensured a steady cash flow from labor contracts and manipulated large construction projects across the U.S. These relationships provided a legal facade, shielding their illegal activities and minimizing attention from law enforcement. The American Mafia also collaborated closely with other criminal groups in the U.S., including Irish, Jewish, and even Asian gangs. These alliances were often based on shared economic interests, such as bootlegging during Prohibition or controlling casinos in Las Vegas. A prominent example is the partnership between the American Mafia and Meyer Lansky, a significant figure in Jewish organized crime. The collaboration between Lansky and leaders like Lucky Luciano helped establish the casino empire in Las Vegas, generating enormous profits for the American Mafia. However, the American Mafia's domestic partnerships were not without risks. Their reliance on labor unions and legitimate industry partners made them vulnerable to exposure when alliances broke down or partners were exploited by authorities. The Teamsters scandal in the 1970s is a notable example, where the Mafia's connections to the union were uncovered, leading to numerous arrests and trials. Similarly, some former partners turned against the Mafia, becoming key witnesses in major criminal cases. Interestingly, despite their different approaches, both the Sicilian Mafia and the American Mafia regarded alliances as critical to their survival. For the Sicilian Mafia, international alliances opened doors to global influence but also became a burden when international partners were no longer loyal. For the American Mafia, domestic relationships allowed them to dominate key industries in the U.S., but they were more vulnerable when these alliances became targets of law enforcement. So, which alliance strategy is more effective for maintaining power and ensuring long-term survival? The Sicilian Mafia, with its strong international connections, or the American Mafia, with its tightly knit domestic networks and control over legitimate industries? The answer depends on how each organization adapts to the ever-changing dynamics of organized crime and the increasing scrutiny from law enforcement. So, between the Sicilian Mafia with its deep-rooted traditions and public displays of violence, and the American Mafia with its sophistication and modernized strategies, which organization will maintain dominance in the underworld? The answer depends on how you perceive power, loyalty, and adaptability. One thing is certain, though, both organizations have left an indelible mark on history. If you found this story intriguing and want to uncover more hidden facets of the criminal underworld, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our upcoming content. We're here to bring you untold stories.